Hi everybody, I'm Mrs. Cutler and I'm going to read chapter 6, Getting Better. She's gotten so much better. Jack nodded, looking down proudly at Daisy. The little white puppy was standing on her hind legs, sniffing Susan's fingers. It had been 2 weeks since Jack had first seen her, and Daisy hardly ever hid under her basket now, only when there was a lot of barking from the other dogs. Susan had let him go into the pen with Daisy a few times after they've checked with Mom, and it was a real treat getting to pet her and give her attention. Her white fur looked as though it would be wiry, but she was incredibly soft, and her peachy ears were like warm velvet. Jack couldn't help imagining sitting on the couch at home with her, rubbing those ears while they watched TV. You wouldn't think she was the same dog, Maddie said, crouching down to let Daisy sniff her hands too, and Daisy wagged her tail wildly. She still has a long way to go, but she's getting really friendly. Susan smiled at Jack. Who knew reading to a dog could make such a difference? Jack beamed back at her. Since he'd discovered the secret, it still felt like a secret, an amazing discovery. He had been going back to the rescue with Maddie as often as he could. He could visit for a short time after school most weekdays, and he got to be there for longer on the weekends. Since it was a Sunday, he'd been helping Susan all afternoon, and she'd let him take some of the dogs into the little yard so he could throw toys for them to chase. It seemed like a lot of fun to Jack, but Susan promised it was really useful. Jack did most of his reading with Daisy, but sometimes he read to the other dogs too. Pug was definitely less yappy after Jack had sat with him for a while, and it was helping Jack's reading too. Mr. Gardner had told Mom that there was a definite improvement. Jack had even been doing extra reading online, trying to find more ways to help Daisy. He and Amara had found a rescue website that showed how to make a special treat map to keep bored dogs busy. Maddie had let him have the scruffy old fleece with holes that she used to wear at the rescue. Mom had given her a new one for her birthday, and Maddie had been planning to throw the old one away. He and Amara had spent a long time cutting up strips of fabric, and Amara's mom had given them one of Annika's polo shirts that was covered in marker too. They tied the strips through the holes in the square of the fleece so it looked like a fluffy mat. Jack had finished it the night before and brought it with him to try out with Daisy when it was time for dinner. If she liked it, he was thinking he could make some more, maybe some for every dog at the rescue. I'm going to help you get your dinner now, he told Daisy after Susan and Maddie left. He was kneeling on the floor outside her pen, so her nose was on a level with his if she stood on her back legs. He giggled as she swiped her tongue through the wire and licked him, and he had to wipe dog slobber off his cheek. Ugh, I love you two. Back in a bit, okay? In the kitchen, Jack helped Maddie measure out the food, and then he took a handful of biscuits from Daisy's bowl and hid them one by one inside the fluffy mat. It was supposed to make eating more fun as the dog sniffed out the food. It looks good, he thought, eyeing it proudly. You didn't say you'd finished it, Maddie said, coming back in to grab more food bowls. Are you going to try it out? Yeah, want to come see? They headed back to Daisy's pen, and Jack put her usual food bowl down first. He had a feeling that if she wasn't really hungry, the treat mat might not be as fun. If he was starving, having to search for his dinner would definitely make him grumpy. Then he left the mat in the corner of the pen, and he and Maddie stood outside to watch. Daisy wolfed down her food in about a minute, like she usually did, but she could clearly smell there was more around somewhere. She sniffed her way over to the mat and started to root around in it eagerly, nosing out each biscuit and crunching it up. Jack could tell she really liked it. Her tail was wagging excitedly, and her ears pricked right up. That's a hit, Maddie whispered. Wow, I thought it would take her longer. She must have found almost all the food. Daisy was slowing down now. She nibbled one more treat out of the mat and then slumped down next to it. It looked as if she was trying to hold the mat in her paws and cuddle it, and Maddie had to put her hand over her mouth to stop herself from laughing. She's going underneath it, look, Jack nudged his sister. And they watched as Daisy snuffled her way under the treat mat so that she was a little white dog with a fluffy blue head. I think she's falling asleep. She still likes sleeping with something over her head, doesn't she? Maybe she always will, Maddie said a little sadly. I suppose dogs remember things they learn when they're little. It's a habit for her now. Then she put her arm around Jack and hugged him. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring you down. She's always going to remember you reading to her too, you know. Then she looked at her watch and made a face. I better get going with feeding everyone now. Jack crouched down, watching Daisy breathing gently as she slept. She was still so small that the mat could have covered her completely. Hey, someone whispered next to him. Mom, Jack jumped up. I didn't even see you. I know, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. Time to head back home. Do we have to? Jack sighed. Yes, it's about your dinner time too. Mom smiled at him. I'm really impressed, you know. You've been spending so much time helping out here. I like it. I love dogs. I didn't know how much until I started coming here with Maddie. Mom nodded. I can see that. She took a deep breath. Jack, I've been thinking, would you like us to get a dog of our own? Jack stopped watching Daisy's soft, sleeping breathing and turned to stare at his mom. Did she mean it? They could have a dog? They could have Daisy? He never even let himself hope that he could take her home. Earlier on, when Susan had said how much better she was, he'd been so happy. And then a little voice in his head had pointed out, that means someone could adopt her soon. Someone's going to take Daisy away. They might even change her name, and she wouldn't be your Daisy anymore. He squashed the voice down, and then Susan had said she still had a long way to go, and the relief had just surged through him. Not yet. Yes, he yelped, and Daisy twitched under the treat mat. She giggled, and then her whiskery muzzle appeared, and her dark eyes shone up at him from under the fluffy fabric. I mean, yes, that would be amazing, he added in a quieter voice, grinning at Daisy. I always thought it would be too difficult to cope with, but helping the dogs here seems to have been so good for you. Of course, we'd have to make sure it was the right dog, Mom went on, and Jack nodded. That made sense. Daisy was absolutely the right dog. Probably an older dog who's really calm. I bet Susan could help us choose one. Jack went on nodding for a second or two until he actually heard what Mom had said. An older dog, calm. It wouldn't be good to have a puppy. We don't have time to do a lot of training when we're all so busy. But I could pop home from work at lunchtime and do a quick walk, and maybe Maddie could too sometimes. Jack kept his eyes fixed on Daisy. He'd been so excited, so happy for all of half a minute. How could only 30 seconds of hoping make everything seem so much worse now? It was as if he'd been given the most amazing present and then had it snatched away from him again. In fact, that was exactly what had happened. From underneath the raggedy mat, Daisy watched Jack walk away, her ears drooping. He was leaving. He never went without saying goodbye to her. Even if he was on the other side of the wire, he always rubbed her ears and told her how beautiful she was. She scrambled up whining, but he didn't turn and run back. It was as if he couldn't even hear her. She whined louder, scratching her claws against the wire door, and then she gave a sharp little bark. But Jack disappeared around the corner of the hallway without even looking back. She stared for a moment or two, her nose jammed in the gap between the wires. Then she turned away and picked up the treat mat in her teeth. It smelled like Jack and the biscuits. Daisy took the mat with her as she crawled underneath her bed. That's it. Thank you for letting me read to you.